Good morning. Thank you for joining us. It was great to have you all here back last week to talk about our plan to cut Montanans' income and property taxes by $1 billion. This, as we noted, is the largest tax cut in Montana's history. Working with the legislature, we look forward to putting money back in Montanans' pockets through property tax relief and permanent reductions in long-term income tax rates, and we want to do that without delay. Every day, we're focused on opening the doors of greater opportunity so that more Montanans can thrive, prosper, and achieve the American dream. And the blueprint for our next steps is laid out in our budget for Montana families. We encourage job creation. We provide a child tax credit and adoption tax credit to make it easier for parents to raise their kids. We invest to make our schools better. We make it easier to bring affordable, attainable housing to a greater number of Montanans. And we're making historic investments in infrastructure to repair our roads and bridges. And just like families across our state, we spend and invest our surplus responsibly, repairing what needs to be fixed, saving for unexpected emergencies, paying off our debt, and returning $1 billion back to taxpayers. But better opportunities, from more good-paying jobs to investments in education to greater access to affordable workforce housing, don't mean much when Montanans look over their shoulders and are worried about their safety and that of their community. Addressing this will take partnerships and investments, and that's what our budget for Montana families helps accomplish. We've faced serious challenges over the past 2 years. Tragically, we face a drug epidemic and mental health crisis that are driving up crime across the state. Fentanyl-related activity is at a never-before-seen level, not just here in Montana, but across our entire country. It's a consequence of our nation's insecure and porous southern border. Federal officials admit that fentanyl is coming into our country illegally from Mexico. Even though we're some 1,200 miles away, Montana is not out of fentanyl's fatal grip. Just last month in Butte, we saw authorities bust a large-scale drug trafficking organization with ties to the Sinaloa cartel that's pushing meth, fentanyl, and heroin. I'm grateful for law enforcement's heroism in executing this bust, but the drug crisis continues to pose a serious threat across all of Montana. As Attorney General announced in November, law enforcement seized twice as much fentanyl in the first 3 quarters of 2022 than they did in the last 4 years combined. Montana also faces a growing crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous persons. And we've seen human trafficking, another tragic trend that ties to our porous southern border, present an ever-growing threat to communities across our state and nation. These crimes, violent crimes, drug-related crimes, human trafficking crimes, threaten public safety. They leave victims understandably shaken and anxious from the trauma they've endured. They leave people wondering if they're safe and whether they should leave their home. In the most tragic cases, they leave families of victims mourning the loss of a loved one. They drive down property values and increase insurance premiums. They keep new businesses from opening. But rather than sitting by idly and wondering when violent crime will go away, we're taking action. Over the last year, I've hosted 8 roundtables on public safety across our state. At them, I've heard from local officials, law enforcement officers, treatment providers, and nonprofit leaders. They told me what's working and what's not working, and how we can partner to make our communities safer and stronger. These discussions have informed our strategy on public safety going into 2023. They've informed our budget for Montana families. And yesterday, I sat down again with folks where it all started a year ago in Billings. Here's what I heard. They were concerned about drugs in the community. They were concerned about our porous and insecure southern border. They need increased jail capacity for violent offenders and drug dealers. And they also shared that greater than 90% of the crime they're seeing there in Yellowstone County is either drug or alcohol related. This is why our attention to addiction recovery is so important. As I travel to communities across the state, I hear these concerns repeatedly. Unfortunately, this is not unique to our communities. We're seeing it across the entire country. Its impacts are far-reaching on children, on families, on crime, and on our communities. Without question, this crisis requires urgent action from all of us. It's why we've made addressing this crisis a top priority. As you all know, there's a lot in our budget for Montana families, and building safer communities is a key pillar. After decades of Band-Aids at best and kicking the can down the road at worst, we're making the biggest investment ever in our state-run health facilities. For the good of our families and our communities and the most vulnerable amongst us, we're making a $300 million generational commitment to Montana's behavioral health system. The state hospital is a critical safety net for those who need access to acute inpatient psychiatric care. And our investments will repair it, better ensure patient and provider safety, and improve patient services. Repairing another long-neglected state facility, we're also investing an additional $200 million to repair and expand capacity at the state prison. To ensure we're cracking down on criminals, our budget also funds 16 new highway patrol troopers and criminal investigators, as well as 6 new prosecutors at the Montana Department of Justice. These criminal investigation agents will focus on drug trafficking, human trafficking, narcotics, major crimes, and crimes against children. And the new highway patrol troopers will strengthen our drug interdiction programs. I'm proud to be boosting our law enforcement efforts to make our state safer, and will continue to support all of our heroic law enforcement officers serving in the line of duty. And while we crack down on criminals peddling dangerous drugs like fentanyl into our communities, we're also focused on expanding access to treatment and recovery for those struggling with addiction. While there's no silver bullet here to end this epidemic, there are steps we can take to confront it. The Angel Initiative is one of those. Launched by our administration, the Angel Initiative allows those struggling with addiction and substance use to go into any participating law enforcement office and ask for help and get connected to treatment. So far, 23 counties have committed to partnering with us on this program. We'll keep adding more as we go, and our work won't stop there. Beyond Warm Springs and across our state, our budget invests in intensive behavioral health care and community-based services for outpatient care. We face an epidemic of addiction that's gripping our communities and tearing families apart. That's why it's critical we continue building a full continuum of substance use prevention and treatment programs for our communities. In January 2021, we introduced the Heart Fund as a central component of the last biennium budget, representing the largest single new expenditure in that budget. Working with the legislature, we got the program across the finish line, and it provided $25 million per year to fund a full continuum of substance abuse prevention and treatment programs for our communities. Successful prevention and treatment programs help people who have hit rock bottom regain their health, rebuild their lives, and become vibrant, productive members of society. Under the previous program, gaps in coverage reduced the effectiveness of community-based prevention and treatment programs. In some communities, there was no coordinated prevention program at all. In others, there have been gaps in meth treatment. And in others, there's been a lack of local recovery support for someone leaving treatment who wants to stay clean, sober, and healthy. It's critical we close these glaring gaps, and the Heart Fund is doing that. I should note it's not bigger government, though. It's a community grant program to help nonprofits and NGOs do the work on the ground that's right for that community. When addiction recovery specialists work in our local communities, they're able to connect with struggling individuals and guide them on a path to recovery. With guidance and resources from the state to improve our response to addiction, communities will lead the effort because they know what's best for their local community. And I'm proud our budget for Montana families expands our historic progress, boosting the Heart Fund by 50%. With more resources, our community partners will be able to serve those struggling and make an even greater difference. Our budget also permanently funds 8 drug courts across the state that are losing federal funding. These drug treatment courts are a proven successful model. They provide Montanans struggling with addiction with hope and opportunity as they get clean, sober, and healthy. With these investments, together we'll add vibrancy to our communities, making them an even better place for Montana families to raise their children. In closing, I want to thank our local leaders and partners who have joined us to combat violent crime and build safer, more vibrant communities. It will take investments, and I'm proud our budget makes those investments. I look forward to working with the legislature to get these initiatives across the finish line. Before we open up for questions, I want to mention one more thing about budgeting. It's critical that our students graduate from high school with strong financial literacy, as well as a fundamental understanding of civics. That's why today I urge the Board of Public Education to require students to graduate with a half credit of personal finance and a half credit of civics. Our graduates should understand budgeting, managing debt, paying taxes, and saving. They should also be equipped with knowledge of our government and the rights and responsibilities of being a citizen of our constitutional republic. Their future and ours will be brighter if they are equipped with these critical lessons. With that, I'm happy to open it up for questions. Who'd like to go first? Yes.
As I understand, an alternative tax rebate measure to what's proposed in your budget. It looks like they want to put quite a bit more money into income tax rebates in a one-time sense. And I wanted to give you a chance to talk about that and talk about it. But also more broadly asked, the legislature is interested in less investment, more money going back to taxpayers. How does that square with the bill you're talking about today?
Yeah, so thank you for the question, Eric. First, there's 4,400 bills going through the legislature, and I'll give everyone that gets to my desk serious consideration. I do want to note we've proposed $1 billion of tax relief for Montanans, permanent income tax reduction, and $2,000 in property tax relief to every Montana resident that owns a home here in the state. I was just in Yellowstone County yesterday. In Yellowstone County, for the average homeowner, that will mean a 45% reduction in their property tax bill next year alone. So we'll continue to work with the legislature. I'm sure that we'll come to resolution, but we agree that we should give a good portion of the surplus back to Montanans. Are there any online? Yeah, Brooke? Go ahead, Samantha. Yeah, and I'll leave it to the Board of Education to figure out how to integrate this. This is an important thing I've heard as I've traveled the state, that we want our young people to understand how to save for the future and how to balance a checkbook and just the basics of personal finance. That is lacking in some schools. That's why we believe it should be a requirement for high school graduates. And the civics really needs to be integrated with history. I'm a student of history myself. I think it tends to repeat itself, but it's critically important that we have informed citizens that understand how our government works so that they can make their voices heard and participate and bear the responsibilities that come with the system of government that we have here.
Yes, and I have one other question for you as well. So I noticed that today when you were talking about more funding for mental health, it was more focused toward more funding for helps with sobriety. And while I think that's also extremely important, what other types of help are we going to be having for other cases of mental health, such as like therapy and being able to integrate practices like that into our schools as well?
Yeah, so there's a number of initiatives related to mental health. In our budget for Montana families, we've allocated $300 million for comprehensive mental health. A portion of that will be used to help rebuild and upgrade the state hospital. The second priority is for more community-based mental health services. Prior administrations had terminated many of those services, and it's often best to provide mental health services in the community where the individual resides, so family can be part of the support system. We're also expanding by 50% the Heart Fund. These are nonprofits in the communities that are doing work in addiction recovery, counseling, and we think those steps taken together are going to be effective. The one last point I would add, I didn't talk about it today, but we have a number of actions we're taking to improve licensure in the state so that we can have more behavioral analysts and others through simple things like reciprocity of licensure with other states where they have adequate standards so that if people want to come here and practice, they can. Healthcare, mental health in particular, just like every other industry, we have a workforce shortage. We should make it easier for people to come to Montana and practice here. Is there a question in the room? Yeah.
Governor, can I ask you about the drug treatment courts?
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that federal funding was expired for that. Can you tell me what the backstory is on that? And then I know not everybody supports funding those courts. So why is that important for you? Why do you support those?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm happy to talk about it. I was with Judge Nisley yesterday in Yellowstone. She's really been a champion of these treatment courts. Just so folks know, essentially what a treatment court is an alternative sentencing mechanism for judges. So I think people who commit violent crime, the drug dealers, we need to hold them accountable. We need to have a jail cell for them. But for people that are trapped in addiction, who have not committed a violent crime, we need to help them get healthy. And that's what the treatment courts do. They cost a fraction of the cost of a jail cell. About 10%. You can have somebody in a treatment court for about 10% of the cost of incarcerating them. And the jail cell doesn't do as much to help them get healthy again. So that's why it's a priority for us. It costs less and it has a better outcome. Most of the initial funding for drug treatment courts come from federal sources, but it is term limited. It expires. That's what's happened with these drug courts. We think it's a good investment for the state because it helps people get healthy and become productive members of society. But if we didn't step up and backfill the federal funding that was going away, these drug courts would cease to exist. Is there another question online, Brooke? Hi, Kate. Go ahead.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having us. I really appreciate it. I just have one quick question about the financial literacy bill or initiative. Is there a current bill addressing the implementation of personal finance or civics classes in high schools? I ask because I know that Representative Mitchell from Columbia Falls was planning on bringing a bill forward that would make financial education required. So I just wanted to know if there was any crossover there.
Yeah, so thanks for the question. There may be a bill. There's 4,400 bills that are making their way through the process. We determined that the Board of Education has the authority to adopt this policy without statute change. That's why I've directed the Board of Ed to make that decision and prioritize financial literacy and civics in the curriculum in our high schools across the state. Question in the room? Yes, Jonathan.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Governor Jonathan Andarian, Montana Television Network. I wanted to ask if you have any expectation yet of when you might make a decision on selecting a commissioner for political practices.
Yeah, so we are following the spirit and the letter of the law, looking for a qualified candidate, and I can say stay tuned. You'll hear from us in the next couple of weeks. Other questions? Yes.
Alice Julia Montana from Radio. You had mentioned, kind of switching gears to housing, you mentioned that DEQ and DNRC would, not housing, sorry, red tape relief, would clear building permit backlogs by the start of the year, back in the fall. How is that going? How are the agencies doing that?
Yeah, so when I came into office, we had over 400 subdivision applications that were backlogged, overdue. And I'm pleased to report, as of the end of the year, there is no backlog at DEQ. Through new leadership of the permitting group and some overtime work by state employees, we are now within the statutory requirements for subdivision approval. And if you can't have a permit, you can't build the subdivision. So we've cleared the backlog. And I just want to give kudos to the staff at DEQ for their work in eliminating the backlog. Is there an online question? Okay, Kate, go ahead.
Oh, I'm so sorry, I must have forgotten the role that I had.
Okay. We're waving at you too, Kate. Are there any questions in the room? Yes.
You mentioned the missing or indigenous persons versus minors. Do you have any thoughts on the bill for the grant program that's going through the House and is going to the Senate now from Rep. Freddie Wolf that would provide funding to volunteer organizations that would coordinate with local local responders? I don't know.
Okay. Well, we've taken a number of steps on murdered and missing Indigenous persons by extending a couple of the task force, creating a new commission, extending the LINK program. So this is something we're committed to. I'm hesitant to comment on a bill that's still in process because I don't know what form it will be when it gets to my desk. But when it does, this is a priority for us and we'll give it serious consideration. Any other questions? Thank you for coming out today.